right, good evening. I'm going to call our regular Board of Education meeting for the month of May to order. And we appreciate you all waiting while we were getting ourselves ready to start the meeting. We'll start with the resuscitation of the vision statement, where every school will be a thriving school that prepares every student to graduate from high school, college, career, and community ready. Tonight, we have a couple of remembrances and a resolution before we move into public input.
Hello. So we like to take a moment of silence this evening for our district to recognize the passing of Deshaun Sturkey, who was a 2024 graduate of Capitol High. Deshaun is remembered as someone who always flashed the winning smile and was full of laughter. He leaves a lasting impression from the classroom to the neighborhood basketball court. Deshaun's passing has taken a significant toll on so many students and staff in the Capitol High community, and we remember them tonight. Please join me in participating in a moment of silence to honor Deshaun Sturkey. Thank you. And unfortunately, we have another remembrance. We'd like to ask for a moment of silence this evening for our district to recognize the passing of Preacher Tribble, who was a senior at La Follette High School. Preacher is remembered as someone who would always greet everyone with a smiling face and loving arms. He was the one person that could cheer up just about anyone. His willingness to always lend a helping hand has impacted himself and those around him dearly. He was a free spirit and gave many students the courage and opportunity to be themselves. Preacher's passing has taken a significant toll on so many students and staff at the La Follette community, and we remember them tonight. Please join me in participating in another moment of silence in honor of Preacher Tribble. Thank you.
While we're starting tonight's meeting with those two unfortunate remembrances, we also do want to spend a little bit of time recognizing our outgoing student representative, Megan Fernando. Slightly different note, and we do have a resolution. Whereas Megan Fernando, a senior at West High School, has served as student representative to the Board of Education during the 2024-2025 academic year. And whereas the student representative is elected from the high school student body of MMSD and serves on the student senate, the student representative expresses the interests of students on the school board in an advisory role. And whereas the MMSD Student Senate is composed of up to 8 voting representatives chosen from each high school, the student representative and an alternate, it functions as a medium for communication among students from all Madison Metropolitan School District schools and programs, district administration, and the school board. And whereas Megan Fernando has demonstrated a commitment and advocacy for student voice. Through her role on the board, she has amplified students' interests and advanced MMSD's core values. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Madison Metropolitan School District Board of Education and the MMSD community recognize and appreciate the work of Megan Fernando and the Student Senate. And be it further resolved, this statement be permanently imprinted in the Board of Education minutes for the meeting of May 19th, 2025. Thank you, Megan. You have any outgoing comments or wisdom you'd like to share?
I just want to say thank you so much for opening up this space and welcoming me, and to all of the staff at the district level and school level that helped accommodate me when I wanted to visit schools or attend events. And thank you to the school board for just like maintaining this space and really taking student voice seriously. It means a lot to myself and to every student out there. Thank you.
Thank you. We also want to express our appreciation for Claire Lee, who was the alternate board representative. Claire could not be here this evening as she is currently taking part of on a MICVA trip to Washington, D.C. And Claire is currently running unopposed for vice president and board representative. And we're looking forward to working with her more closely in the 2025-26 school year. So thank you so much again to Claire, and Megan, you will be missed. Thank you for all of your leadership, all of the initiative that you took to really bring student voice to the board in really powerful ways. So hope you have a great final meeting tonight. All right, with that, we'll move over to public input. For written statements submitted before this meeting, there were 6 written statements total, 3 in support of board member Vandermeulen's budget amendments and in support of reducing class size, 1 in support of reducing class sizes for early learners and capping the classes at optimum levels, 1 in support of the proposed budget amendments to increase allocation, and 1 in support of increasing allocations for La Follette High School. For tonight, it looks like we have 7 registered speakers for in person and 2 online, and we will start with our online speakers.
Thank you. Our first online speaker is Tiffany Glass.
Hello, can you hear me? Thanks for the opportunity to share some comments. I'm speaking in support of Nikki Vandermeulen's amendments 9.4 through 9.9 for additional allocation of FTE teachers and educational assistants and to increase expenditures accordingly for the 2025 to 2026 budget. These staffing increases are necessary, and I wanted to explain a little bit about our family's experiences that lead us to this feeling. We think the current understaffing in MMSD disproportionately harms students with higher support needs, including disabled students with high support needs. Our son is a student with multiple disabilities and high support needs at West High School. He requires one-on-one support to be able to communicate and for all activities of daily living and to access academics. Because of understaffing at West High School, critical supports mandated by his IEP were not implemented at West High School for the first 5 months of this school year, which resulted in the loss of his ability to communicate. It resulted in a complaint to the Department for Public Instruction, and it resulted in a complaint with the Office of Civil Rights. The staffing levels required for our son to attend class are currently not available, and our son is often unable to attend class. Our son does arrive to school every day, but many times instead of attending class, the SEA takes him on walks around the school building or for walks outside. Sometimes he arrives to class, but due to understaffing, there's no teacher present, so there is no instruction. Because understaffing makes it difficult for our son to attend class, he has been repeatedly marked absent from school, despite actually never having missed a single day of school. He's been marked absent so frequently that he was placed on West High School's restricted regents list. Students who are on the restricted regents list are prohibited from attending school dances, sporting events, pep rallies, and extracurricular activities. However, students with disabilities and advanced support needs have always been prohibited from attending these functions or experience barriers to attending these functions because the staffing that they would require for the support to make it possible for them to attend hasn't been available. We really support these amendments to increase staffing at West High School and other schools. Understaffing in MMSD predisposes disabled students to leave school, and we think these amendments will help ameliorate MMSD's special education challenges. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next and final online speaker is Darius Carter.
Hello.
Hello, thank you.
Hi.
Ready when you are.
Good evening. My name is Darius Carter. I have 5 kids currently in MMSD, and I graduated from East High School in 2002. It is ironic that last week the camera situation was brought up as I was the custodian that was watched. I want to point out that a news article stated that I was being watched because I was sleeping in the backseat of my car. I have always owned a van and can guarantee you a backseat would not be comfortable to a body size and my shape. The building service chose to violate the board policy that was resulted that board excuse me. The building service had revored the policy, which resulted in a $545,000 settlement with families. I'm here today because I have been a custodian for almost 9 years, with 7 being at the East High School. I came to you looking for guidance on the correct way to report and get assistance when I am being harassed. When I came to East in 2018, immediately there was signs of me getting into it. My first area inspection I had was marked for maintenance issues and second and third shift areas that were not mine. I reported these issues to management and they sided with the building head. Siding with the building head made the issues worse. As a black man and other black men, we would be yelled at by our building custodian until he was red in the face. The issue was brought to management and the union, and no support was given. He accused me once of saying I was going to unalive someone, and when I brought this to management and challenged it, it was told to me that everything was okay in the investigation. They said it was closed. Sorry. Building custodians, the building custodian kept harassing me until he retired. There was another incident where management denied me overtime, and I accidentally received an old email where it stated, deny him from overtime, and there was nothing's gonna happen to you, and it'll be okay. When I brought this up to the management and I told him that I found this email, he brought to me that when he came out to see me, the first thing he yelled to me was, I voted for Obama and Black Lives Matter, and went to give me a fist pump. I come today to you guys where I just want a clear way there. I'm sorry. I've come today to you to try to get a clear way of how to get things figured out where it's clarified of how we go about when we're feeling harassed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Important know the whole.
All right. We'll now move on to our in-person speakers. Our first speaker is Grace Van Berkel, and then will be followed by Ariel Hendrickson. For our speakers in person, as you come forward, there's a 3-minute clock up here, and then on the podium, there's a little black box. When you see the light turn yellow, it means you're about 30 seconds out, and then red light will match the timer. If you are still finishing up your thoughts, if you could just do so in a few short seconds, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Members of the board, Dr. Gothard, my name is Grace Van Berkel. I have a sixth grader at O'Keefe. I have students also at Marquette and Lapham, so I'm a parent. And I am the early childhood special ed assistant at Lapham Elementary. And I am here today to voice my support of Board Member Vandermeulen's budget amendments. So please pass line items 9.5 through 9.9 to reinstate staff at Lapham, O'Keefe, East, West, and La Follette. And that measure, I sort of see that as stopping the bleeding that's happening. For a longer term solution, I please urge you to take up Board Policy 3450 to reduce max class sizes, particularly in the second and third grades. They need to be lower than 27, more in line with kindergarten and first grade, no more than 23 students. Also, as a change to the policy, I urge you to keep classes around the optimum when doing the allocation process so that we're not hitting max class sizes already in February, the year before the next school year starts. And I'm sure you all know this, but there are decades of research showing that small class sizes lead to improved literacy outcomes. And so this is very important, especially for our students with individual education plans. And it would just be a huge win for our community to put money for student-facing staff and create those smaller class sizes. So again, I urge you to please pass Board Member Vandermeulen's budget amendments, items 9.5 through 9.9, and then please take up Board Policy 3450 and reduce max class sizes, particularly for second and third grade, but not limited to. Even our older students deserve small class sizes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. After Ariel Hendrickson, we'll have Ann Schulke. Sorry.
Hi, board. Thank you for taking time to listen to us today. My name is Ariel Hendrickson. I am a parent of a first grade student at Lapham, and I've sent in written statements, I've sent in communications, I've had all the numbers, all the facts, everything that I can. I didn't come prepared today because, frankly, it hasn't really felt like I've been heard. So instead, I'm just here to speak impassionately to support our student-facing staff and to support class size, or to support reducing class sizes. My first grader is looking to go into a second grade classroom with 27 students. And I don't know how you'd get anything done with that number of kids in a classroom, especially losing support staff. I also am here as an MMSD graduate myself. I went all the way K through high school. So I'm here not just to criticize and complain, but in partnership. I moved back here to bring my kid to Madison schools because of what a great experience I had. And I want him and all students to have that same opportunity to be able to truly learn. And he's not going to be able to do that with a class size so large. It also breaks my heart to see that his teacher was cut and is moving to another school, and they are an amazing educator. And my husband is also an educator outside of MMSD. He's experienced cuts, being surplused, and I know firsthand the pain of not knowing where are you going to be, how are you going to be valued. He would love to teach at MMSD, but he doesn't feel it's worth the risk to come in and be cut and have to bounce around. And it breaks my heart to see that for him. It breaks my heart to see that for our educators, that they chose to come to a school and then they're being cut and they have to go somewhere else, and they know that their position is ultimately going to have to be refilled because we're going to have more kids come into our schools. So I appreciate your time, and I really hope that you will listen to all the things Grace said much more eloquently than me, reduce our class sizes, and support our educators. Thank you.
Hi, members of the board. My name's Ann Schulke. I'm a parent of a fifth grader at Marquette and a second grader at Lapham. I came here to speak in support of board member Vandermeulen's budget amendment 9.5 through 9.99. Teachers, students deserve adequate support in the classroom, and teachers deserve dignity, the dignity of some basic measure of job security. I wanted to read a statement from a MMSD teacher that took the time to respond to our school board survey. They said, I support a more equitable approach to staffing allocations, and it seems like the best option would be capping at 90% max, so there is adequate student-facing people in the buildings as much as possible, and smaller class environments support better learning outcomes for as many as possible, and also to improve staff satisfaction. Let's stop high turnover rates and keep people in this profession. This will build on the shared purpose and pride of MMSD and our community, people first. Please support our students and our staff via smaller classroom sizes. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Corey Rich, and then following will be Patrick Downey.
Hello, board. Thanks for having me today. I'm Corey Rich. I am the director of the Legacy Program at Operation Fresh Start. And I wanted to come today to thank the board for their continued partnership and commitment to finding alternative pathways for education for all students at MMSD. As you're probably aware, the need has never been greater. This year alone at Operation Fresh Start, we've had over 80 applicants from the junior class this spring to our Legacy Program. But I do believe we're seeing those record numbers because our partnership works. So I wanted to use my time today to tell a couple of those stories about the success that our shared students are having. I'll start off by saying this past Saturday, we had 2 of our former graduates from the Legacy Program earn their associate's degrees from MATC, one of which graduated with a full-time position with Dane County as an arborist. That's a position that is highly sought after, family sustaining, making a lot more money than I'm making. So really proud of him. And also wanted to mention that, both of those students had previously dropped out, but through our shared partnership, found a pathway forward to complete that high school diploma to allow them to go on to greater success. I also wanted to invite you all and everybody here today to celebrate with us. We've got 2 graduations in the coming week or so. Tomorrow we have a graduate from our Legacy Program, so 4 o'clock at Operation Fresh Start. An MMSD student will be graduating. And then a really exciting special one for us, Wednesday the 28th at 4 o'clock, a former Legacy participant and current Conservation Academy member will be graduating. We're doing what we call a signing day. So he just got an offer from the City of Madison Engineering Division as a land restoration tech. So that graduate earned his diploma through our Legacy Program about 2 years ago. Last year decided to re-engage with our programming, earned his driver's license, several certifications, including wildland fire certifications, chainsaw use and safety certifications, federal disaster response certifications, and beat out over 100 applicants for this position. So really excited for him. So yeah, please join us in celebrating our shared success. And I just wanted to finish by saying, I think what makes the partnership special is that we all have a commitment that doesn't end for our students at their last day of high school. It doesn't end at the degree. I really appreciate your collective partnership and ensuring that folks are landing, important life-sustaining careers. So thank you very much, and join us in that celebration.
Next up, we have Patrick Downey, and then we'll follow with Calvin Fisher.
My name is Patrick Downey. I am a sophomore at La Follette. I'm here to ask you to give us funding for the purpose of running an AP chemistry class next year. There are at least 16 students that I know of who are signed up for and want to take AP chemistry next year. This class would open doors for everyone who takes it, as well as allowing early college opportunities. It would increase accessibility to academic rigor because it is a college class for a fraction of the price of one. Finally, there's a teacher, Ms. Dudek, who is very motivated to teach the class. It would make a big difference if you allocated us funding to fund the class. And I'm going to read a brief statement on behalf of Ms. Dudek. Okay, I'm the AP chemistry teacher at La Follette High School. In my short time, I have worked to strengthen and increase the rigor in the chemistry department. I fully believe in the district's vision of ensuring students are college and career ready. The availability of higher level science classes is an important piece of this, and AP chemistry would be a great part that could help prepare students for college. Okay, that's all. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Board members, thank you for your time and attention again tonight. I'm a parent of 3 kids in the Lapham enrollment area. And like many East Side parents, here a couple months ago to complain about what the proposed allocations are going to do to our schools. Much love to my spouse for soloing bedtime tonight so I can go complain and not be heard. That meeting a couple of months ago was a bruising hour and a half of complaints, but I was one of the few who stayed to watch the whole meeting, and I was kind of astounded that the first item on the agenda after that was about the superintendent's trip to an organization publishing an annual report designed to help superintendents negotiate higher salaries for themselves. It seemed a little out of touch, as did spending hundreds of thousands on a scoreboard when the district's planning to cut a third of our special ed teachers, put almost 30 second graders in one class, and shuffle teachers around like some pieces in a board game. But you've heard all this already. And yet Board Member Van der Meulen seems to be the only one taking the complaints seriously. So try something else. I've served on and chaired boards of directors before. I'm well aware that you all get complained at a lot. Last time I was here, I heard someone call you fascists. As someone who's had that experience shared with you, I know that it can be discouraging to hear all that anger, but ignoring these complaints are not going to make them go away. I've heard some members of the school board wonder, why are they complaining to us? We don't manage the day-to-day. That's the superintendent's job. That's true, but you're his boss. I'm still getting acquainted with how this specific board works, but unless I'm mistaken, you control the budget. You control higher authority over the superintendent. That makes you his boss. So what do you do if you're getting a lot of complaints about someone's work who reports to you? You give them clear and direct feedback. You took action X, that resulted in negative outcome Y. I expect to see Z instead, easy. Any one of you could have proposed a motion or declaration like the ones Board Member Van der Meulen's proposed. I'd like to seed your imagination by pointing out that you could do a lot of other things too. You could instruct the superintendent to lower the thresholds for classroom overcrowding. You could direct the superintendent to place a 2-year moratorium on any new initiatives or top-down work for frontline teachers based on the recurring negative complaints from teachers. You could tell the superintendent to publish and adhere to limits on the practice of surplusing, like no more than 2 surplusing events in a teacher's career, or no moving between high school districts, whatever. These are all just ideas. You all have a lot more experience with this than I do, so I'd like to see what you can come up with. But whatever you do, give us back our teachers, please. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next. I think, I'm so sorry. I'm gonna try to, I think it's Kali. Is there a Kali Guatemala? I'm so, okay, thank you.
Rushed handwriting because I was right at the last minute.
Thank you for correction.
Hi, my name is Colleen Gogawala. I'm a parent of 3 kids in the O'Keefe, Marquette, and Lapham schools. So I'm here asking you to support the amendment 9.1 through 9.5, obviously. And then I also am asking you to support the policy change on 3450 about maximum class sizes. And I'm not going to take up all the time here. I do want to say that this is our first year in Madison schools. We moved here from Texas. I'm from here, so I want to move back to town. When I was researching where to go, what neighborhood to move into, I wanted to move into the Marquette neighborhood. But time and time again in my research, I saw Madison schools have declined. You should go to the outlying school districts. That's what the responsible choice would be for your kids. I refuse that. I want to be part of this community. Madison is a source of great pride for me. It's my hometown. And Marquette, our neighborhood in particular, I absolutely love the sense of community we have. And I love our schools, and the kids love their schools. But Jacob, my youngest, 7 years old, he's in the classroom that his teacher was surplaced. So he's gone. He won't be there next year for Jacob. Jacob won't see him in the halls. And then Jacob next year might have a class of 27. He's going in a class of 16 this year. So I just want a moment for Jacob to tell us what that might be like for him if he were to be in a class of 27 next year.
It would be harder to learn and harder to listen, and it's like you can't really learn anything when you're, because there's going to be so many people shouting and having fun when you're trying to learn, and it's going to be really hard to learn when that's happening.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you to all of our speakers who are here with us tonight and who also registered online. We really appreciate you taking the time and the effort to come forward and let us know what's on your mind. I'm going to move us into the rest of our agenda, starting with the approval of minutes. I move that the Board of Education approve the minutes from the regular meeting dated April 28th, 2025.
Second, Maya.
All right. Are there any questions, corrections for the minutes? All right, I think that's hearing none. Megan, your advisory vote. All right, all those in favor, aye?
Aye.
All right, thank you. All right, that's unanimous, passes, thank you. All right, next we'll move into board president's announcements. I'll start it off and then Vice President Pearson can also help. All right. First, we'll start with celebrating our students. East Senior, it's Eva Tycho, I believe, is the pronunciation, was one of 51 students nationwide who was recognized with the prestigious Billy Michael Student Leadership Award from the National World War II Museum. The award is given to students for their leadership, service, and resilience. Also, La Follette senior Caroline Tallis, who was named an international medalist in DECA's entrepreneurship event for her excellence in role play. This is La Follette's first international medal since the club relaunched 2 years ago. Congratulations to our student athletes from East. There are 7 of them. La Follette, there are 6 of them, and West, but there are 20 of them who have signed college commitments building on their athletic and academic excellence. And there are more than 100 MMSD middle and high school students who took to the stage at the Overture Center to participate in the city's Project Soapbox Youth Speech Showcase, speaking out on issues that are important to them. Yesterday, Wright Middle School 6th grader Nico Paradiso represented the district at the national event in Washington, D.C.
Celebrating our community. We'd like to recognize our Hmong community and commemorate the 50 years since their arrival to the United States. Their important contributions have enriched our schools and our city. The board celebrates Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, and Hmong American Day was celebrated on May 14th. Thank you for being part of our dynamic MMSD community. Celebrating our staff. Congratulations to Sarah Elmore, a school counselor at East High School, for being named a Counselor of the Year finalist in the Avid Global Achievement Awards. Sarah is one of just 4 finalists nationwide and was recognized for her dedication to student success and unwavering support. Sarah will be recognized at the Avid Summer Institute, and the national winner will be announced this December.
Nice. And then we'll finish out with another couple of acknowledgements. In tonight's consent agenda, the board would like to acknowledge and thank all individuals and organizations that have donated to the district, especially the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction for granting up to $10,000 to support the Healthy Academy at Memorial High School, Badger Rock Middle School, O'Keefe Middle School, and Chavez Elementary School. True Stage Foundation, Inc. Has also donated $10,000 to support students and staff at John Muir Elementary School. And they also, True Stage has donated $20,000 to support upgrades to Hamilton Middle School's locker room space. We also have some other donations. Dane County has donated $64,368 to support funding for the MSCR Driver's Education Scholarship Program. The Engelke Family Foundation, hopefully I pronounced that correctly, has donated $200,000 to renovate and improve the library at Thoreau Elementary. The Wisconsin Department of Workforce Development has granted $481,540 to the Urban League of Greater Madison to support the Urban Educator Cohort Pathway Program, an innovative partnership between the Urban League of Greater Madison, MMSD, UW-Madison, and Edgewood College. And that will fund 42 participants across MMSD and 4 other local school districts who are working towards various forms of teacher licensure in the program. And then lastly, the Renabaum and UW-Madison School of Education for donating $382,000 to support a total of 20 participants in the district leadership preparation pipeline program, providing current MMSD staff a cohort-based program to become school-based leaders. So lots of good things and great donations coming into the district. Before I hand it over to the superintendent, I also wanted to just go back and acknowledge that there was one person who registered tonight but did not want to speak. And that person, Katie Fitzmeyer, wrote that they were in support of reducing max class size, going back to the class size policy, and supporting any policy modification. So sorry for overlooking that earlier. And now I'll turn it over to Superintendent Gothard.
Thank you, President Nichols, Vice President Pearson, members of the board, staff, and community. Thank you for this opportunity. I'd like to expand a little bit on celebrating the 50th anniversary of our Hmong community in the United States. As Board President Nichols shared, this year we celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Hmong community in the United States. Multiple events were held throughout Madison to commemorate this important milestone, and on Friday, our Lakeview students, staff, and families were invited the community to learn about the Hmong language, history, and culture through art, fashion, dance, and so much more. I also want to uplift our Hmong Heritage Bilingual Program, the first of its kind in the state of Wisconsin. This program models how we can create a cultural connection and deepen cultural pride within while strengthening bilingual literacy and providing a space where students can learn from each other. This is a program we can look to as we consider opportunities to create programs that students see themselves in. Finally, I want to acknowledge that while we celebrate this important historical milestone, we must also keep in mind that this is also a time for reflection, learning, and healing as we remember that their journey to the United States was to escape war and persecution. Their stories are personal and powerful. Next, I'd like to share a little bit about a joint school city bus tour that we took recently. You're looking at a picture of members of leadership and administration with the city planners from the city of Madison. Earlier this month, I joined other district leaders and the city planning staff to tour some of the major housing developments in several areas of Madison, including Oscar Mayer, Hawthorne, Acacia Ridge, and Elver Park. In addition, we explored areas of planned or potential growth, including Hill Valley, Ramish Farm, and Sprecher Road. We saw firsthand just how much Madison is growing. Apartment buildings and housing developments are popping up throughout the city. According to the city's house tracker, more than 500 homes have been built since January, and there are another 4,200 under construction. In about 25 years, we are expected to grow by 100,000 people. Although it seems like a long time, as most of us know, it really isn't that long at all. Now's the time to consider how that growth will impact how we support our learners and engage families. A dedicated team is monitoring growth and development throughout the city to help us plan for the future. I cannot express my greater thanks to Megan Tuttle, Madison's Planning Division Director, and her team for joining us on this tour and providing further insights on Madison's growth. And it really was an interactive tour that we had with them. And it was great to also learn that several of them are MMSD parents. So it was so much more than what you might think from a council meeting or a report. They know what it's like to also be in our neighborhoods and be in our schools. President Nichols also mentioned a generous community philanthropic gift. Let me talk a little bit more about how we prepare future leaders in MMSD. I had an opportunity to welcome our next district leadership preparation pipeline cohort. We call that DLPP. This partnership with UW provides an opportunity to help current MMSD staff prepare for school-based leadership. It was humbling to hear their stories about who inspired them as a leader and what motivated them to be an educational leader. They saw the potential within themselves and what they could bring to our scholars, which is not only humbling, but exciting for them and the students they may someday lead. Their initiative to begin this journey is inspiring, and it is an immense undertaking. Not only will they be students, they will also continue to serve our MMSD students. Please join me in wishing them the best success. We need excellent leaders today and in the future to help our students be college, career, and community ready. And I have to add just a couple things. The whole reason we do this, everyone, the whole reason that this school district exists is for students like Megan, who in just a few short weeks is going to be walking across the stage and getting her diploma with hundreds, thousands of others from the Madison Metropolitan School District. I cannot give our class of 2025 a more heartfelt congratulations. Best of luck with your future plans, and make these next few weeks memorable. And know that we're all very proud of you and will continue to support you. So congratulations to our graduates. As we also close out the staff, many of you know I've now conducted a lot of visits, almost 40 after this week. And I just cannot tell you enough how much I thank our amazing staff for a great academic school year, and hope many of them continue to work throughout the summer in various ways with MMSD as well. But this has been an incredible academic school year. And, you know, again, being from the district, having worked in the district a long time, I walk away from every one of those visits learning so much more about the moment in the life of a staff member, a teacher, certainly a student, a principal, and just very impressed and very grateful for a wonderful school year, as this is the last regular board meeting of our academic calendar. So just a wonderful thank you to everyone for a successful year, and Megan and seniors. I hope that you have just an incredible future ahead of you, and will always remember your time in MMSD as being very grateful and well cared for. And that is it for my report.
Thank you, Dr. Gothard. It's always an exciting time to go to all the high school commencements. All right. All right, so we're gonna move through now to items that proceeded through the instruction work group on May 5th, 2025, and I'll have Chair Muldrow report on that.
Thank you so much, Board President Nichols. On May 5th, our board had a robust conversation about early childhood opportunities throughout the district with an emphasis on 4K. We also had a lengthy conversation about our middle school programming. At our next instructional work group, we will be talking about our multilingual programming. We will also receive an update. We will also receive an update on the progress of our Office of Youth Reengagement.
Great, thank you. Next, let's report on items that proceed through the operations work group held on May 12th, 2025. Chair Castro on that.
Thank you. So on May 12th, we received the district audit on use of cameras in the district. We received a update on the district's sustainability efforts, reviewed progress on the referendum, reviewed a proposed sale of general obligation bonds, and then finally reviewed where we are with the budget. Our next meeting is slated for June 9th, 2025, where we will review final changes to this upcoming budget, ongoing identification of one-time funding from state and federal sources, an outlook at the state budget for 2025 through 2027, review ongoing community feedback on the budget, look at the facilities changes for next year, and then finally just prepare for the final budget or the preliminary June budget vote on June 23rd.
Thank you, thank you. All right, we do have one action item tonight that proceeded through the instruction work group held on May 5th, and that is policy 8012A, sexual harassment, or Title IX. I move that the Board of Education approve the sexual harassment Title IX policy, policy 8012A, in accordance with the documents prepared for the May 19th, 2025 regular meeting. The policy will be revised effective immediately.
Second, Maya.
All right. Is there any discussion on this policy? Board Member Muldrow.
I'd like to request a roll call vote, and I'd like to explain that I'm going to abstain from voting on this specific item because the time in which this is being brought back to us and the Dear Colleague letter we received from the federal government feels out of alignment with the way we've engaged in the process of revising Title IX previously. I very much appreciate the work our administration has done to ensure that our students are not being discriminated against on the basis of gender, gender expression, gender identity. And I am not going to vote in favor of as I see like part of what prompted it is the federal government's desire to shift Title IX into something I don't align with.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Yes, Board Member Mosner Feltham.
New seat. I wondered if our legal counsel could speak a little bit about why now this is going on for our community who might be watching.
Board Member Mosner Feltham, can you expound in terms of the why now?
Sure. So, so to Board Member Muldrow's point, so much of the executive orders of the federal government are being challenged in court presently. And I had asked previously in work group meetings why we would make changes to our Title IX policy now when so much of those efforts are currently being litigated, and received some interesting answers. And so I was hoping that we could have those. Does that help?
Yes and no. So the subject matter expert isn't in this space today, not here present today, but what I can at least share in terms of why now. I know you referenced the order, so yes, in terms of compliance, that order does make it effective immediately in terms of when the change was supposed to happen. But as was shared with the board, this was a change that the district and legal, we were comfortable with and supported because it essentially reverted back to what it was prior to when this change was made back in 2020. And with our policy that we had in place then, and even now, is something that, well, I should say with the policy that we had back pre-2020, post-2020 through now that's currently in effect, and the one that we're proposing, that's something that we can still stand by in terms of in the best interest of our stakeholders and students and staff who are impacted by it.
Thanks.
And what I would add to that is that that's irrespective of the current administration.
Monica, to clarify, the way I remember the last review of this policy, that even in going back to the 2020 version, we already were very inclusive in our language around the district prohibiting discrimination and harassment on the basis of gender, sex stereotypes, sex characteristics, pregnancy, related conditions, sexual orientation, and gender identity, right? So that even though we're reverting back to the 2020 version, the version that we had already approved as a district was far more inclusive than perhaps in other places.
That's correct, far more robust in terms of the protection. So it shouldn't be seen as less than or a reflection of the current administration, which I know is the concern.
Great, thank you. Any other comments? Okay, Vice President Pierce.
And then my question is just, we are required to review this yearly, so it's more so also on a compliance situation, just to make sure that we're timely and that everything is good every year. So
What I will say is we're not at that year point yet. It's okay to look at it sooner, but we're not. I believe when you voted on it, I have August in my head. It was during the summer, so July or August. Correct.
okay, thank you.
All right, so with that being said, we have the motion on the floor to approve the version uploaded in board documents tonight. I will start with Megan, your advisory vote. Okay. Board member Saravo. Okay. Board member Muldrow, are you abstaining? Okay. Vice President Pearson.
Aye.
Okay. I myself will be aye. Oh, board member Vandermeulen online.
Nay.
Okay. Board member Castro
Aye.
and board member Mosner Feltham.
Aye.
Okay. So that passes with 5 ayes, 1 nay, and 1 abstain. Oh, no, wait, I think I counted Megan in that. Wait, 5. Yeah, that was right? Okay, yeah, thank you. All right, we also have several items that proceeded through the operations work group on May 12th that we need to handle. So item 9.1 is the resolution establishing the parameters for the sale of of promissory notes. So let me read the motion. I move that the Board of Education approve a resolution establishing parameters for the sale of not to exceed $181 million general obligation promissory notes, series 2025A, as set forth in the documents prepared for the regular meeting dated May 19th, 2025.
Second, Maya.
All right, are there any questions on this? Okay, board member Castro.
No question. I just want to make a comment that I just want to say thank you to our district finance office who over the years have advised, counseled, and partnered with the board to make these smart and savvy financial decisions that limit the impact to taxpayers in the district and maintains the district's long-term financial viability. And that's one of these maneuvers here tonight. So thank you.
Thank you for that. All right. Megan, your advisory vote. All right. Okay, all those in favor? And Nikki, I heard your aye.
Aye. Yep.
All right. Thank you. That passes unanimously 7-0. All right, moving on to the next resolution. I move that the Board of Education approve a resolution establishing parameters for sale of not to exceed $40 million taxable general obligation promissory notes, series 2025B, as set forth in the documents prepared for the regular meeting dated May 19th, 2025.
Second, Maya.
All right, thank you. Any discussion or questions on this one? All right. Hearing and seeing none. Megan, your advisory vote? All right, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you. That passes unanimously. All right, 9.3. All right, now that we have approved the 2 parameter resolutions that we just did related to the sale of general obligation bonds, we should consider amending the 2024-2025 budget to reflect the deposit of the $200 million received from the sale of the bonds in Fund 49, which is our construction fund, and to deposit the estimated bid premium in Fund 39, which is the referendum approved debt service fund. So I move that the board of Education increase the 2024-2025 budget to reflect the proceeds from debt in Fund 49 by $162 million to deposit the sale of general obligation bonds and increase Fund 39 rather by $10,105,422 to deposit the estimated bid premium under other sources.
Second, Maya.
All right, any questions or comments on this? All right, Megan, your advisory vote? All right, thank you. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
All right, and I see all other hands up. Passes unanimously. All right, now we're moving on to specific amendments. 9.4. I move that the Board of Education approve the allocation of 10 FTE teachers and increase expenditures by $1,188,160 in the proposed 2025-2026 budget to create dedicated building-based substitute teacher positions to be assigned to the 10 neediest schools as identified by Human Resources in collaboration with associate superintendents.
Second, Maya.
All right. Okay, hold on one more.
Sorry.
Board Member Vandermeulen, I see Board Member Muldrow's hand up, and then can I come back to you?
Of course.
Okay, Board Member Muldrow.
I want to start by recognizing, in part, that this is like your first year with the district, and I think we've made pretty significant impact. We've made a really significant impact on staffing that really shifted a 3-year trend. And I also think prioritizing our educators has been a priority of this board in terms of our investment. And so my question for you, Dr. Gothard, is in terms of the designating substitute teachers to, and I'm just going to repeat this because I actually really dislike this term, our neediest schools. Is that a response to some of what we're hearing from our community and from our schools? Is that a response to some of the board's amendments as Nikki, Board Member Vandermeulen brought them forward? How will that function? And can you please kind of lean into what neediest school means?
Sure. President Nichols, Board Member Muldrow. I think that, the team can certainly come up and address this as well. I think that when you look at data on some of our hard to fill areas, I think sometimes neediest can be described as perhaps schools that have a high percentage of children who qualify for free and reduced price meals. I think that is a way that many times our schools are ranked. And the mental models of that, there's a lot behind that. So we probably don't have time to have that discussion tonight, but I'll be the first to share with you that I think with our added substitute bonuses, I think that our fill rates are at an all-time high in this 3 years. And that should be no surprise as we're coming back from, what the low point of two. And I think that I can share with you that I've been in one of the schools just recently that's on this lid. They remarked to me, they've identified 4 people in their community who they can call and are there for them. I think our principals and school staff have done a great job of creating their community of people who can come in and help in times like this. And I think 2 years ago, even a year ago, this might have been a very different discussion, but to allocate 10 staff for this purpose when we have fill rates that are approaching 90%, I'm just not sure that right now this is the highest priority. We'll support, obviously, the board's movement here. And you certainly could get a different answer from members of the team who are here as well. But that's what I would say to you, that it would rank our schools based on how neediest is perceived. And that's in conjunction with members of our team. And those 10 schools would be identified and have that extra billing based sub.
thank you so much for that explanation. And I do want to ask of, over the course of the last 3 years, we've seen we have more vacancies at the end of the year than we do at the start of the year. And this year was the first time I had seen that trend interrupted and really shifted. And so I'm tremendously grateful for that work. And I think part of that work is really prioritizing our hiring process. And so I do wonder if this creates a little bit of competition between having floating full-time subs to specific buildings that have experienced staffing shortages or have high volumes of students who live in poverty. As a student who grew up with free and reduced lunch, I don't love the term median. I'm just going to be really honest about that. I don't think that's how, I don't think anybody in my family would have appreciated that as a description of us. But that being said, I do wonder if this in some ways shifts our priorities in terms of hiring or creates an unnecessary burden in relationship to hiring. And so I do want to speak to that portion. And I don't know if you want me to direct that at you, Dr. Gother, or at HR.
Yeah, President Nichols and Board Member Muldrow, the first thing I just want to be able to say to everybody who's listening is administration did not write these amendments. So the language of neediest is not my language or language of any of my team members. I want to be clear about that. I think that, we're talking about trying to identify the very best people who we can put in front of our children, and be that a substitute teacher or a new hire that we're making, we're going to continue to have that be the priority. Again, I'm just not sure that directing this kind of staffing is as appropriate right now, May 19th, 2025, as it would have been last year at this time. We were still facing some real shortages and there were some real questions. I think our team and our community has responded in a really positive way. And I think that every building that I've been in has created the kind of culture where people want to be there. And it's a really exciting thing. I'm feeling a real sense of optimism about our future and our continued staffing.
Thank you.
Board Member Castro.
Yeah, I just have 2 comments and then just my question for the general knowledge of the community, but there's just 2 things I want to point out. One is that this year we've had an average fill rate of 87%. Since March 1st, it's been north of 90%. So I just want to say that to give deep appreciation to Dr. Gothard and the team for making that shift happen. And then this budget actually adds 20 more subs into the pool. So I just want that to keep in mind. But just for general knowledge, can we just explain how the sub process happens when a school needs a sub? How are they receiving that sub in general?
Thank you, President Nichols. Board Member Castro. I'll have Jennifer Trendle join us to give a little bit of background on our sub process.
Thank you for your question. I'm just going to repeat it back to you so that I understand. You want to know what the process is when a school needs a.
Yep, and then how that sub is selected. Just for the general knowledge of the community. Yeah.
Okay. Human Resources has a substitute placement team. They don't actually do any placement. The schools will call in, teachers will call in, and through a system called Frontline, and enter their absences if they're going to be gone that day. And then those absences go out to our substitute pool and they can pick those up. A lot of times what happens is that principals have developed relationships with substitutes and they have those people come to their schools, but they are open to anybody who is a substitute to pick up that job.
Got it. Okay. And so if we had 10 dedicated to these schools, then presumably they would be off limits to the general pool or general schools who call in.
Correct.
Okay. And on the flip side, that would inhibit these subs from potentially filling in at other schools and potentially earning more money.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Board Member Mosner Feltham.
Thanks. I'm going to be voting in favor of this amendment. And I want to explain what my thinking is. One is that I have like a long running fantasy of over allocated schools where people are not at 100% from the job. So that as needs arise, they can be filled. I respect and appreciate the what's been put on the table in this meeting completely. But I want to also include like what you might use a sub for that you can't use that you wouldn't use a sub for if you don't have lots of substitute support available. I'm sick, I'm not going to go to work. Okay, for sure. Hey, can you cover my class for 30 minutes so I can have a long phone call with a parent? Those are sort of different things. And when there is a building-based sub available, those sorts of things become possible. Hey, can the building-based sub cover my afternoon classes so I can do a student shadow? All of these things that could be possible, and I think would be helpful to our schools. So I'm going to vote in favor of this. I don't get the sense that it will pass based on our conversations in previous work groups, and that's just fine. And I do want to say I probably wouldn't vote for it 2 years in a row or 2 years in a row at the same school. Because when I imagine what could be possible with an extra adult, an extra certified adult, whose job is not set out quite at the beginning of the year, what I imagine with that is that it would make it possible for a school to say, where are our needs? Where does a little bit of extra flex let us grow? And how can we learn from that year of extra support? So that's where I'm standing on that at this moment. And I wanted to share that with my colleagues and with the broader.
Thank you. Board Member Vandermeulen, I am so sorry. I was supposed to come back to you a couple of board members ago. So please, you next.
Absolutely. As I clarified my Facebook page, sorry I'm not there tonight. I meant no offense on neediest. Neediest means the least amount of staff. It had nothing to do with financial. I will avoid the term in the future. However, that was never my intent. It was for those that had the greatest needs in the building for more teachers, not the financial realities of the students. As for the amendments, and I'm going to, the substitute amendment, I did this because oftentimes I see schools who are scrambling to find subs at the last minute. This would take our schools that had the most vacancies and say, hey, we have a hard to fill opening and we need these individuals at this time. This is not a permanent fix. This was to be able to create a sub pool so that way we won't have any problems in many problems in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Vice President Pearson and then Board Member Saravo.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, my colleagues, for some of the commentary that you've provided on this. I did have a question for admin, I think maybe just to HR more specifically about, so when a substitute can choose where they would like to be placed based off of what is available. Am I correct in that thinking? Okay, so I'm seeing nods in the audience to a yes. And so this directive, from my understanding, would then direct the administration to have a pool of 10 and then allocate specifically to those schools. Is that what I'm hearing from this amendment? My thinking? Okay, so I'm getting guesses again from the crowd. Okay. To Savian's point, if I am a substitute, and to Blair's point of like needing support in classrooms for things that happen like one-off, or not just as simple as, or not just as like maybe a little more complicated where it's like someone's sick or someone goes on maternity leave and those kind of things, like long-term subs. If a school gets allocated a substitute and say like they're good, they don't necessarily need those like one-off things throughout the year, But because of staffing previous years, and when we think about allocations and such, they have been designated this one person. They don't use that person. Then what happens? Does that person just be in limbo and that person doesn't get utilized? Will it be reassigned at any point throughout the school year? So my questions is really around like the mechanics. And so I appreciate the sentiment of the amendment. I appreciate my colleagues and some of their commentary, because I do agree, like there are those things, you know, my kids are also in elementary schools, and there are those times where you need that support. But then I'm also thinking about that staff member, if they are then mandated essentially to be that fill-in sub, they don't necessarily get to choose. Like I'm not really seeing a lot of flexibility for then that person to be able to maneuver and kind of like be where they want and where necessarily they need. And then again, to that question, if someone can answer it, does that person just be in limbo if they're not ever utilized? And so now we're possibly losing a sub.
So a couple of things. I think the way the amendment is written, they would be assigned to a school. They would not be assigned to the district.
Okay.
So we will first have to identify the 10 schools and then then appoint those individuals to the school. The other thing I just also want to talk about is one of the things that we're over here talking about is we ran into issues with subs because of the license situation. They can only be in a certain classroom without having a license for 45 days. After that, then we have to switch them over to another position because they can only be in that role according to DPI. So in essence, we can't use them like a full classroom teacher for a full year. There's some limitations on how we can even use them in the time where they're in the place.
Okay. I appreciate that context. And I think, I guess I'll just explain where I'm at. I will be voting no again on this amendment, only because I do understand the sentiment and I do understand the need. And I think that it was a great, like the spirit of it was good. I think when you get down to the technicalities, and then, you know, because of our fill rate, because of some of the things that were just mentioned, I don't think it's ready to be able to say, here are 10 people and we're just going to assign them without some of the mechanisms built in to make sure that one, those subs are successful, two, that they're placed where they need to, and three, that they actually will get utilized the way that they should be, because of all the nuances that go in there. So I will be voting against this.
Board Member Saravo.
Thank you for this. I'm still in a learning curve coming with everybody here, so I appreciate all the discussion that's going on across the table. Listening to everybody and having the idea of sub goes in there, and there's a lot of, I worry about the amount of time that we're assuming that a sub is also going to be available, and what do you do after that certain amount of time? If they should be needed longer. The support in the classroom, particularly, I think it's kind of what concerns me about when the classroom teacher expects to have additional support as well. So we're looking at class sizes. I know some of our schools have a certain amount of space that they're dealing with. So you can have a certain amount of classes, but when is a teacher, when should they expect to have more support for them? And when the students expect to have more support, especially when you're growing from the students that we had here earlier, when you're growing by 10 more and you have that less access to one of your teachers during that period of time. So I'm looking at all this stuff and how is that applying to the teacher? What can we expect? And within the roles of a sub, the amount of time that they're there and the reliability that the students can have on a person building, and then the teacher's expectation of how long they're going to have access to that.
President Nichols, Board Member Saravo, I want to be clear here and share just a little bit about what I believe is the spirit of this amendment. When you have someone in a building who is comfortable, known, who can fill in multiple roles on any given day, any given moment that an issue arises, it is a really helpful thing to have an individual like that. Our schools have a lot of those individuals. I know I can see faces in schools where that's the only building where that person wants to sub, and it's because of that familiarity. So there are a lot of informal building-based subs that we have in our system, just based on relationships. And it could be, I live in the neighborhood. It could be my children went to school there. It could be, I know that principal and they call. So I think a lot of those relationships exist, and even outside of this 10, those would remain as well. But that truly is why a design like this isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just a matter of identifying for 10 schools and making sure that it's fixed, where I think that there are some other opportunities for us to look at a system for how we support our substitute teachers.
All right. I don't see any other further questions or comments. Oh, yes, Megan.
I will be voting in opposition of this, and I want to explain why. I am very supportive of getting these schools the help they need. I am not sure that it necessarily makes the most sense to do it in this form, especially when there's the 45-day restriction and there's not a mechanism here to reevaluate if these schools need a different form of support, or if another school would be more supported by this role than that school with the original placement has. I think I would be supportive of this if there was a way to reevaluate halfway through the year, or at different points, to see what that would look like. I am just not sure that I can support it in its current form. Thanks.
Thank you for that. I will just say that the way that the motion reads right now, the motion reads that this would allow for 10 dedicated building-based substitute teacher positions to be assigned to the 10 neediest schools. Neediest, I believe Board Vandermuller means not a reflection on the students, but the schools that need subs the most. And then those schools would actually be identified by human resources in collaboration with the associate superintendent. So although we see very specific schools listed in Board Member Vandermeulen's original amendment, the way the motion reads, I don't think it limits us to the schools that were listed in her original amendment language, correct? It would follow the motion.
Correct.
Okay. So I think for me, just to wrap this up, I am in support of this. I think that given what we just heard from Dr. McCray about there may be some limitations on total number of days. There may be some things about this original amendment that may not be fully actualized throughout the year. And to your point, Megan, I think it would be worthwhile if implemented to come back and then evaluate, well, how many of these building-based subs were we able to deploy? How long were they able to stay in certain buildings? I think there could be a little bit of an evaluation of how this approach works. And it may not actually go up to the total dollar amount listed based on some of those limitations. But I think I appreciate the spirit and the sentiment conveyed in this amendment. All right, given that, Board Member Mosner Feltham.
I just want to say one other thing about subs. Like, just like super shout out to the subs of our district, who do so many different types of things as the need arises, sometimes with like very little warning, and can make a really big difference in the educational experiences of our students. So props to the subs.
All right, we'll go ahead and take the vote. Megan, your advisory vote.
Nay.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that's 3. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed you, Martha. Okay, that's 4. Those opposed? 1, 2, 3. All right, so this one passes 4-3. All right, we will now move on to the next amendment, 9.5. I move that the Board of Education approve the allocation of 1.0 FTE second grade classroom teacher and increase expenditures by $118,816 for the Lapham Elementary in the 2025-2026 proposed budget. And Board Member Vandermeulen.
Second. And and may I have discussion?
Of course.
The reason I wrote this the way I did, and although I clearly am not the best drafter in the world, still working on it, we'll get there. But the reason I wrote this is that time after time I heard people saying, my kid is used to this teacher. My kid thrives under this teacher. My kid does great under this teacher, only to have them surplus and have them moved. And to me, that is devastating to the child. It's devastating to the parent. I understand there's a system in place. Problem being is the system is breaking down and it's not working. We're doing things after the fact, not proactively. And because of that, I think it's a problem and that we need to restore it. As for why I named specific schools, I named them because they're the ones who oftentimes aren't heard from as much as some of the others. I did not base it on poverty. I did not base it on need. I based it on whether or not the school had been requesting it through their parents and the students themselves. Thank you. That's all I have.
All right, Vice President Pierce.
Yeah, I'd like to hear from administration just about, so if this passes and we give that one allocation back for the second grade class and the expenditure of 118K, there's 2 questions I have about it. One, would that teacher who was surplus be then reallocated back to the school? And I asked that one because we've heard folks come and testify to us saying, our teacher was removed and we don't have the allocation. They're no longer their surplus and whatnot. But I just want to be clear, like, if we add this, does that mean that that specific teacher will then be added back into that specific school?
They will not.
Okay. And so to me, is it a question of what? Sorry. Go ahead. Oh, so then to me, it's the question of, okay, is it the one teacher that folks are really looking for, or is it the number and the actual class size? Because I feel like I'm hearing a combination of both. And I think it gets a little confusing as to then what folks really want. And so I just wanted to ask that.
So two reasons I want to make sure why I'm saying no, that's what she was trying to, because it's based upon the handbook. Now, the position will be posted. That person who was surplus could apply for the position, could be reassigned and hired, but it will be just to become a position that we posted for anyone to be able to apply to because they were surplus and it's based upon the handbook. The second part of your question is the current class size for next year for those second grade at 23.
Mm-hmm.
I believe the number because of 27, because that is the maximum amount that students can be in that class based upon the class policy. But that is not the current class size that's projected for next year for that particular class.
Okay, thank you for saying that. The other question that I have, TJ might just stay, but the other question that I have around this amendment and the rest of the amendments as related to schools, specific schools, is that if we decide to go with agree to go with each of these amendments, with Lapham on just because it's the first one, but really to all the questions, what does that mean in terms of us having to pull staff from other areas? Like, would that occur? And then how does that then impact some of the other schools? And so I just wanted to ask that question, and you can definitely ask me to clarify that more. Yeah.
When you say, just to clarify a question, because, so for example, let's use Lapham, that's the example. No one would be pulled from that position unless, again, if someone is already in a position, they apply, then they get the position, then now that just creates another opening.
Got it.
Board President Nichols, Vice President Pearson, I'll explain it another way. These would all be net positive budget additions, meaning that we would have to post them just like they're new positions to our system.
Okay.
So we wouldn't be pulling staff. This would all be in addition to everything that we've allocated for the 25-26 school year. These would be additional budget, would be added to our budget and staffing.
Okay, so it won't be pulled necessarily. Sorry, I'm just like thinking through it. It won't be necessarily pulled from the staffing, any staffing allocations or anything like that. But based on our budget, that's another expenditure that we will have to add on top of that for each of these
Correct.
allocations, because we're specifically saying allocate this to this place. Okay.
Correct.
So then my thinking is that if there are multiple positions that we, and this is just open to the board just to think about as we are going through this, each of these, if we are adding another allocation, another budget piece on an already constrained budget, okay, where then are we going to pull some of this money from to make sure that we do that? And so it's just opposing the question. I think I'm grateful for the community and coming, and the students and the parents and everyone advocating for that. And I think it's important to make sure that folks have that space to do that. And, you know, I've spent some time at Lapham and some of these other schools and walking through and being in classrooms and hanging out with the kiddos and all that. And so by no means is my position on this meaning that I want any of the schools to go without or have lack of. I think for me on this one, I will probably vote against, because I'm also thinking about, if it's just these schools, we have some other schools who have some deep needs also. What happens then once we then say only these schools get this, and every other school that also has very specific needs? Some schools are at capacity, are almost at that 27. And so then what does that look then to provide support for those schools as well? And so I am not saying that these schools don't need this. I'm saying that all of our schools need something. And I just want to make sure that we do it in a way that honors all of our schools. And so unfortunately, I will be voting against this.
Megan, did you have your hand up first, and then I'll come back to board member Muldrow?
I was wondering if someone from the administration could describe why the initial decision was made to remove this teacher. And then in the hiring process, like, let's say this motion passes, the job is posted, what would the administration be taking into account if an applicant had already been allotted a certain position at a different school? Sorry, I know that may have been.
Nope, that's what I think I understand. So 2 questions. So the particular teacher, your question is why was this one moved? So the handbook that helps to determine how the surplus process works. The building principal works with the schools at their school to say, I received my allocation, I have this amount left, and then they use a number of different things, including a rubric, to determine what teacher would be surplus. Before the teacher is surplus, they also ask for volunteers where teachers can say, oh, I will be surplus so that you don't have to mandate someone else to be surplus. So there's a process that happened that's based upon a handbook that allows us to actually go through this process. Second question was if if someone can go back into the position. I just want to make sure.
Yeah, so in the hiring process, like, let's say this amendment carries and passes, we post the new job posting, we get a certain amount of applicants. In the actual like hiring process, would the administration look at whether or not a certain applicant has already been allotted a space at a different school?
So what will happen is that come July, so this position first and foremost will become available July 1, because that's when the new budget cycle will take place. So once that happens, then the position will become posted. It will be just like any other position to go through the regular hiring process. Anybody will be able to apply. It can be someone internal, it could be someone external. The position's just opened up to allow for applicants to be able to apply. And then the principal will use a hiring process to determine who he or she would like to hire.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you. Next, I see Board Member Muldrow, followed by Board Member Vandermeer, Bravo, and Mosner Feltham.
Thank you so much, Board President Nichols, for the opportunity to speak to this amendment. I find this amendment and the amendments that follow to be particularly complicated because I have a core belief that the resources of our community should follow the students. And so if you have a school with a shrinking population and you have another school with a growing population, I think that you get to reconcile that internally, and I think that that can provide tremendous opportunities. And I don't say that from a lack of compassion or understanding for the instability of being surplus. But I do live with a teacher who I'm married to who was surplus twice early in his career. And when he was surplus, the principals he was working with at the time really used the opportunity for him to grow as a professional within education. And he really appreciated, as somebody who was originally a substitute teacher and has gotten to be exposed to schools across our district and work with phenomenal people in different capacities at different schools, the opportunity to, really strengthen his approach to his work and to get different opportunities throughout the district early in his career. I think the surplusing process is a pretty sensitive process and that people do it in partnership with their principals, in partnership with their families, and have made real decisions about their careers in relationship to being surplus. And I don't think it's as simple as saying, we want to move this person back to this school. And I think that there's a need to be in real communication with the educators we're making these decisions related to in terms of whether or not this is the solution to surplusing. The other thing is I think what we're talking about is our overall approach to surplusing in alignment with our handbook, and whether or not we want to shift that unilaterally at specific schools at specific times. I think if you have an occupational therapist that's working with a specific group of children and that group of children ends up at another school, the school that they're currently working at doesn't get to just say, like, we really like this occupational therapist, and so whether or not we have students who benefit from their presence in the building, we're going to keep them. I think that the resource has to follow the needs of the students. And so for that reason, I'm voting against this amendment. Voting against this amendment because I think it doesn't take into account the shifting populations within the district in a way that we can reinforce over the course of time. And I completely respect the board members who do not agree with me on this, but I think that this amendment, like the amendments that will follow it, is really complicated in terms of how we operationalize it and what it does to undermine our processes and our practices. I would appreciate greater information from our administration related to our retention of educators that are surplus. And I would appreciate greater information around what we plan to do if we're wrong in terms of our calculation of a student population. And so if we thought there would be a lot more young people at a specific school at the beginning of the year and we get to the third Friday count and that hasn't manifested, what do we do? And if we thought there were going to be a lot fewer students and there actually ends up being more than anticipated, how do we react to that? Because I think some of the tension around destabilizing faculty is that we don't have a crystal ball and we don't know it's going to work out exactly the way we're predicting. And I think there's some nervousness around that. You have.
Mayor?
If I could have a member of the team, please describe the third Friday count and the watch list that we have so we can talk about what happens in the event that our projections are off.
I'm gonna start off, and I think Ms. Green is gonna help me. She's gonna be my partner in this one. All right, so I took note of your first request about like really understanding the sense of like what happens with as far as retention for surplus. So I will be able to follow up with that one at a later time. What happens with what we are considering our watch list is we monitor on a weekly basis the enrollment of our students by grade level. What happens is that there's a group of individuals who are working here in central office, and what begin to do is when we notice the number of enrollment shifting, we use the unallocated pot of that we have in order to add to those courses when the numbers are really high. The number of individuals cover individuals from both teaching and learning, our school leadership office, and of course budget, to make sure that those information is correct. In addition, there's conversation that's held with the building principal so that they know, like we are watching this particular class for you to see if the enrollment does shift. And if there's a shift, then we will add the additional allocation to it.
Good evening, everybody. I just want to add a few things to what Dr. McCray said. That monitoring of enrollment is happening right now, and there's a few key moments in time we look at. So a reminder that right now our school starts scheduling all the students that they know are returning for the following year at this moment. So we look at our dashboard, we check the number of students per section aligned to our class size policy at all grade levels. Then on August 5th, our registration and enrollment process for the following school year formally opens up for both returning families and new families. And then around August 18th, after our secretaries and other 10-month staff come back to buildings, we start looking at that enrollment again more closely. And that is really when we start to look at the unallocated pool that Dr. McCray mentioned, for both where we're seeing sections that are over our class size policy and also where there's sections that are under our class size policy, because we see it on both ends. And at that time is when we start to consider if there is a need for additional staff at a school, or if there is a need to shift staff from one school to another or one grade level to another. Third Friday count is the kind of next time we do that, but we try as much as possible to have all of those shifts happen before the school year starts so that families are settled, staff are settled, training is able to happen. But that is the process. And then that process happens all year up until we are at this moment in time where we're starting to adjust for the following year. And the team meets on a regular basis as we lead up to August 18th. It happens more than once a week. So in this situation where we're talking specifically about Lapham Elementary School, as we continue to monitor enrollment, the projected enrollment for that grade is 46. If that enrollment changes between now and August 18th, that is one we would take into consideration if there is a need to make adjustments. Does that answer your question, Board Member Muldrow? Thank you.
All right, we'll go to Board Member Vandermeulen next, and then Martha Saravo, and then Mosner Feltham.
Like to take some of the questions in order. Maya, the reason I wrote and hand on how we're going to pay for this, I would like to take the money out of the unallocated pool is what I'd stated in the slides, but I'm not sure if that got refreshed tonight, so I just wanted to help on that. As for the surplus process, the allocation process is broken. It involves administration, it involves principals, it doesn't involve the board, it doesn't involve the parents, and most importantly, it doesn't involve the students. And that is a problem directly, and they need to have some say. As for the surplus and why it's necessary, and the following our handbook in 2019, on the anniversary of Act 10, the board changed the rules of seniority, stating that no teacher under a certain number of years could be surplus because it would affect the ability for us to recruit black and brown teachers. That was changed in 2019. And so I'm not saying we should unilaterally change it. I don't believe it unilaterally changing the handbook. That's not how we do things. But what I am saying is this. I think we need to realize that our children need stability, and this could bring some back. Additionally, we can't play Jenga with student lives. We can't just place kids one place and not another based on predictions. We got to talk to everyone who's involved. And that's why I made these amendments. Yes, they may pass, they may not. I understand, but I need to state that way we're handling it right now and then adding it at the back end ends up causing more of a problem. As for the talking to the direct teachers, I was in brief contact, but not close enough to the particular Lapham teacher. I did talk to the Lapham PTO. That was my error, and I should have done it sooner. So I appreciate Board Member Muldrow for bringing up that point. And that's all I have on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki. Board Member Saravo.
I want to appreciate Board Member Vandermeulen for bringing this back into the discussion. I think it's something where it's a system that needs to be addressed. I would actually like to see the board look deeper into this. We always know that just because we have a very strong pool of parents and community members that are willing to come and speak at these meetings multiple times in a row, to not know that there is a bigger picture going on that really needs us to bring everybody back to the table and ask what's appropriate, what can we do better, how can we have the community and teachers have better expectations of what does appropriate allocation look like in our schools. So this whole conversation has had me pulled in a really interesting direction because I understand why Board Member Vandermeulen brought these up very specifically, and because I think there's a much bigger pool of schools that share the same concerns and have looked at the process in a very similar fashion. I think that's a bigger discussion that needs to be revisited, especially when we're talking about class sizes or when does a teacher expect to have more support in the classroom as a class size might get bigger during the school year as well. And I'm not sure if the expectation or the communication in what that process looks like is really clear to everybody, and so it creates a lot of anxiety right now, which I completely understand, because there's always anxiety there, especially when we had our Tiffany, one of our parents, who I know very well, because when you have a student that also needs very direct support, you wonder if your direct support is going to be available during the day too, just depending on the busyness of the class and everything else that's going on in the school. So I'm hoping the board can consider taking up this discussion in another manner to really address this more holistically, to find out what is come to a better understanding of what's going on and what does support look like from the beginning of the year in a more proactive way instead of reactive, which is what it seems to be sometimes. But if you wanted to speak on that, I appreciate it.
President Nichols, board member Sarabo, I think we would just need to talk about, as a board of directors, what is the appropriate governance on this process? Right now, we are adhering to the policies that we have in MMSD. I mean, so that's where the discussion would need to take place. I think we can also always talk about different ways of support and different models for that. That would be additional investment. And that's also part of the board's purview in terms of how resources are spent. So that might be another place too that we look at, some alternative ways of supporting classroom teachers. But again, that would be I think a much longer and more thorough discussion for us to have as well.
Board member Mosner Feltham, wait, was that, okay.
Thanks. I agree, board member Sarver, with your sentiments that we're due to take up as a board questions of like what we think creates the conditions for the best possible learning experiences for Madison students. I think that class size policy is part of that, although I don't think it's the end of that. And so to the community who's spoken on taking up that class size policy, I'm in favor of looking at that and thinking about, as a board, do we want to put things in place that would say the goal is to be here at a certain time? That said, I'm not comfortable with budget amendments that target specific schools in this way. It doesn't feel right to me. I think about, it doesn't feel right to me to respond to real needs in what feels to me like a strictly emotional way, or like strictly for the loudest voices in this moment, because we have had plenty of other times where the loudest voices are from other schools, but without sort of seeing it system wide. I'm not comfortable with supporting these amendments, and that's where I'm at. And I haven't heard an argument that changes my mind to that point yet. I do also want to say that although the unallocated pool can be a little like grisly, I guess, when it's working, because these are not ideal situations to not know exactly what's going to happen before it's going to happen. I do feel confident in the 20 FTE unallocated pool being able to manage what we don't know yet. So that's where I am sitting. And I want to thank my colleagues, and I want to thank the administration and community members, especially at these schools who have put forth such effort to do what's right by Madison students.
Yes, Megan.
So I want to agree with board member Mosner Feltham, and I agree with a lot of what's been said. I think as the student representative, I need to abstain for the votes that are targeting specific schools, especially when the resources that are being taken from or given to one school are taken from another. And I really struggle with going on a case-by-case basis because I represent all the students. I do think that we need to look at our class size policy. It's hard to have big classes when you're in high school. I cannot imagine what it's like to have big classes when you're in elementary school or middle school. And I think we need to look at the way that we're doing allocation and surplusing, but when students have reached out to me about teachers or educators being removed from their school, there have also been students that have reached out to me and said, our school really, really needed the support, and like, we're really happy to have like this teacher coming in or this educator coming in. And so for me, I'm gonna abstain for all of these amendments that are targeting specific schools. Thank you.
Member Castro, I'd also get in the queue at some point, and then Dr. Gothard.
Okay, yeah, I just want to highlight Board Member Muldrow's point that I believe the resources should follow the child. I know that school-based enrollment projections, I think that we can unlift the veil on that, on how that model actually works, but it is, at the end of the day, a statistical model with a margin of error, and that's what we have to live with at the end of the day.
President Nichols, members of the board, just a couple of comments about the financial impact of this. We would not, or we're not in the position right now of moving any resources from a school that's been allocated. So there wouldn't be any shifts right now. Anything that you decide tonight would come from one of two places. The first would be from the 20 unallocated pool. So you've made the decision to put in place 10 building-based subs. Right now, that unallocated pool just went from 20 to 10 because that's how we budgeted it. That means that we go into the fall with 10. If those 10 are depleted, then we have to look at how are we going to, spend from our fund balance in order to do that. I mean, it's just how it works out. I mean, we have 20 unallocated resources. And if we deplete all of them, then we have to start looking for other ways and other sources to take from to make sure that we can deliver what we have to. So that's how it would work. We wouldn't be taking from any other schools at this point. Where that situation could happen is if a school is overstaffed in the fall. If we all of a sudden have a section that has 4 students, that might be a place where we look to move that staff member, but that wouldn't be a net new spend. That would be a moved or displaced teacher. We try to avoid that to the best of our abilities.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Gothard, for that. First of all, let me just say, as a person who just voted in support of the 10 building-based subs, that dollar amount that was in the motion did not lead me to believe that that was coming from the 20 unallocated. So I would like us to be able to take that up at a later time. Because we all may just need some time to figure out where that's coming from. But when I read the motion, I saw the dollar amount. I saw that the human resources in collaboration with the associate superintendents would determine the 10 schools. I did not see that as being funded out of the unallocated pool. So I would love to be able to that maybe in more detail. But I know we're on this motion, so this is not to put you on the spot. I just wanted to, I don't know if other board members who voted for it
Well,
the same impression.
I'll make sure I'll make sure that I clear that up.
Thank you. Can I just comment on this amendment? Hey, board member Vandermeulen, are you still able to put your camera on?
Yeah, sorry, I hit a button.
No, that's okay.
Oh.
I just wanted you to know that I won't be voting in support of the following
Fine.
amendments that are very specific to schools. And some of the reasons I stated are as I stated at the operations work group, but I wanted to let you know that I appreciate you listening to staff, listening to the community, and bringing these amendments forward. My reasons for not voting in support of the following amendments that are naming schools are mostly because I believe part of what I hear you saying in your amendments is that you believe the allocation process is broken or needs some work. And what I would say is that might be true to some degree. However, the administration, when they're putting forth the allocations, it's based on our policy around class size and their work to do projected enrollments. And the enrollments may not be perfect, right? But they're working hard to figure out with more certainty as they can how many students they believe will be in a grade, in a school the next year. And we have a policy around class size. And so, you know, to the extent that our students sometimes move from one, well, we know they move from one grade to the next, but sometimes they move from a school to a different school. Sometimes those numbers do shift. And and we need to be able to have our teaching staff and our support staff kind of shift with where students are enrolled by grade and by school. And so sometimes that does mean there's a shift in one place, and that's hard to experience. And so I guess I would say that I don't feel comfortable at this point going into very specific schools down to a class level or a grade band. I think in the board role, it might be worth it for us to come back and look at our class size policy and try to get clearer about if there are things in next year's allocation process that we would want to be different, that we're having those conversations kind of starting off the year before the administration is communicating that out to schools. But I do just wanted you to know, Board Member Vandermeulen, that I appreciate the spirit of the amendments, but I won't be able to support them tonight.
May I answer that? I just want to thank you, and I appreciate your heartfelt sentiment. I do agree we have to have discussion on the allocation of class sizes. I've raised that for the past 8 years. So we definitely need to raise it, but I have a feeling that this is not a way of punishing anyone. I just want to be able to help as many as possible. And I think that you understanding how heartfelt they are goes a long, long way to helping create how important it is, because you're listening as much as I am. And I really appreciate your work on it. So I thank you for that. And those feedback is excellent. Thank you.
All right. Megan, I know, oh, Board Member Muldrow. Oh, okay. Board Member Megan, I know that you said that you wanted to abstain, but I'm gonna still call your advisory vote, and then if you can just say you're abstaining, okay? So for on this amendment related to Lapham Elementary, your advisory vote,
I'm gonna abstain.
okay? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, so that that amendment fails. 6-1 with 1-6, thank you, with one abstain. All right, moving on to the next amendment. I move that the Board of Education approve the allocation of 8.5 FTE teachers and 2.5 FTE educational assistants and increase expenditures by $661,289 for the O'Keefe Middle School in the 2025-2026 proposed budget.
Second, Nikki Vandermeulen.
Okay, any discussion or comments, questions? Board Member Muldrow.
Board Member Vandermeulen, I deeply appreciate your willingness to take into consideration the O'Keefe's community's needs. I will be sending a sixth grader to O'Keefe next year. I think that although I respect the nature of the amendment, I'm going to vote against it for the same reasons I voted against the last amendment. I'd like to be consistent across these amendments as they impact individual schools.
Understood.
Any further comments as the maker of the amendment, Board Member Vandermeulen?
No, I do not.
The question?
No, I do not.
All right, any other comments, questions? All right, seeing none, Megan, your advisory vote.
I'm going to abstain.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, that amendment fails 1-6. We'll go on to the next amendment. I move that the Board of Education approve the allocation of 3.0 FTE teachers and increase expenditures by $356,448 for East High School in the 2025-2026 proposed budget.
Second, Nikki Vandermeulen.
All right, any questions or comments? Do you have one, Board Member Saravo?
I'm just going to continue in the notion of why, we're voting in the way that we are for each of these is a recognition of being more holistic with our approaches and more discussions going forward.
Thank you. Board Member Vandermeulen, as the maker of the amendment, do you have any further comments that you want to make
No,
before I call the question?
Nope.
All right. Board Member Megan, your advisory vote.
I'm going to abstain.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, that amendment fails 1-6. Next one. I move that the Board of Education approve the allocation of 3.0 FTE teachers, 2.0 FTE educational assistants, and 2.0 PBIS, positive behavior intervention specialists, coaches, and increase expenditures by $791,334 for the La Follette High School in the 2025-2026 proposed budget.
Second, Nikki Vandermeulen.
All right. All right, I see Board Member Muldrow.
I think we've had a lot of conversations around our allocation process and our classroom size, but I do want to bring into this conversation our overall relationship to staffing. And so one of the concerns I've had when our board has made decisions to add staffing in specific ways, in specific roles, is that we're not taking into account the entire makeup of the school. And I think a lot of times there's a partial equity lens applied to those kinds of decisions. And so I think it's really exciting for a student to have access to a sub when their teacher is sick. But I think it's really important that if your teacher is on maternity leave and your math teacher isn't there, that the teacher you have is certified in math, right? And I think sometimes we're not taking into account like how nice it is to have a village builder at a school. But I think it's a really unfair thing to say this kid gets, a village builder and this kid gets a certified math teacher depending on where they're going to school. And so I really hope that we have an analysis of our class size. I'm really in favor of us doing that work. But I also hope that we really have a conversation about the accumulative impacts of roles we've added and the results that those roles have promoted at specific schools. I'm not planning to vote in favor of this amendment.
Board Member Vandermeulen.
Yes, I also believe it's a partial equity issue when you cut the only ASL teacher in a school that has the largest deaf population. I believe that is also an equity lens that often is overlooked and needs to be addressed as much as every other equity issue that this board deals with. I respect your comments. I think they make a lot of sense, and I hope we can work together in the future on this issue.
Board Member Muldrow.
Nikki, I'm in complete alignment with you in terms of our need to meet the needs of our students who are hearing impaired. I do want to ask our staff in relationship to that cut or surplus, because I think what you're talking about is really the integrity of our services for specific student populations. And so you're naming that specific cut as something that could produce an inequitable result. I want to ask our staff to speak to that.
That would be a good idea.
Good evening again. So I just want to clarify between our staff that supports students that are deaf and hard of hearing versus a world language course that offers American Sign Language as a world language. There have been no reductions to our staff that support students and staff that need interpretation in the classroom. We have interpreters for sign language for both staff and students at La Follette High School, and that continues. We also have that at other schools. What I believe Board Member Vandermeulen might be speaking to is American Sign Language as a world language course. And based on course requests, the number of sections that that school would be offering has been reduced. And we've seen that over the last few years, that is where students are choosing or not choosing to take a particular world language. Is that, yeah.
Follow up with that and
Sure.
I'm sorry. Can I follow up with that and just say, do we know what makes students more or less likely to take French comparison to Spanish or German or to learn sign language at the high school level? I would imagine that's really specific year to year, school to school. Is there something we should take into consideration in terms of this reduction? And I guess what you're saying is the reduction is really being dictated by student interest in the course and enrollment in the course.
Correct. I think a few things. I think students take more than 1 year of a world language, so it isn't necessarily year to year. Many students take at least 2 years of a world language, even if they've taken world language in middle school, mostly because of kind of the progression that happens. And for many students that are interested in going to a post-secondary institution, 2 years are required. So students usually take 2 years. So we see kind of this continuation. I don't know the specific reason for the reduced number of course requests for American Sign Language at this particular time. I don't want to speak to that. I just don't know the answer to that.
I greatly appreciate that, and I think it's a really nuanced conversation. I do want to mention that we expanded opportunities for world language at the middle school level, and I do wonder if maybe there's some opportunity to kind of reconsider the variety we're offering at that level. It does allow students to earn high school credit at the middle school level, and so there is potential that students feel like they have achieved that high school credit and maybe want to pursue courses that benefit them in a different way towards college. So I would be curious about the long-term impact of that. And I really appreciate you speaking to it. Nikki,
Thank you.
Your concerns are valid, and I think it's worthwhile to make sure we're being pretty precise in this conversation.
I really appreciate that, and I thank you for the assist.
All right, any other questions, comments, or Board Member Vandermeulen, anything
None.
additional as the maker? Okay.
None. Thank you.
Yep. All right. Board Member Megan, your advisory vote.
I'm going to abstain.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, that amendment fails 1-6. All right, we are on to the next amendment.
I have to leave. Huh? I think that's all of them, or do I have one more left? Am I
We're
missing?
up to 9.9, which is the West High School one.
Oops, I skipped, no, I skipped one. I screwed up.
Okay, I'm going to read the motion. I move that the Board of Education approve the allocation of 1.0 FTE teacher and 2.5 FTE educational assistants and increase expenditures by $265,396 for West High School in the 2025-2026 proposed budget.
Second, Nikki Vandermeulen.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Anything that you want to say, Board Member Vandermeulen, as the maker of the amendment?
No.
Okay. Board Member Megan, your advisory vote.
I'm going to abstain.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, that amendment fails 1-6. And before we
Thank-
go on to, before we go to Board Amendment 9.10, Dr. Gothard would like to say something.
Thank you, President Nichols. Members of the board, I just want to clarify my misspeaking and misinterpretation of the form of tonight's amendments. The team will be happy to say that I did not spend any of the unallocated pool tonight. That is a very fixed pool that is very much used for what they just talked about tonight as we look at things on the watch list over the summer and certainly going to fall. So the passed amendment 9.4 would in fact be a 1.188 budget addition. It would not take away from our unallocated pool. And I just wanted to clarify.
Thank you. I have to
Yes,
leave.
thank
See you guys.
Thank you so much for clarifying that, Dr. Gothard. I know at one point when you asked board members for any budget amendments, we were also asked to identify where the payment for those said amendments would come from. And I know at one point, board member Vandermeulen had proposed removing the unallocated pool to pay for some of these other amendments. But it's good to clarify that the one that passed 9.4 will be in addition in our budget line. All right, thank you. All right, so we have 9.10. I move that the Board of Education remove the unallocated pool of 20.0 FTE teachers and decrease $2,376,320 from the 2025-26 proposed budget. All right. That one we will move on from. And 9.11. I move that the Board of Education eliminate 6.0 FTE village builders and decrease $524,475 from the proposed 2025-2026 budget. All right, we will move forward to the consent agenda. That concludes all amendments. I move that the Board of Education adopt and approve all of the motions set forth in Section 10 of the electronic agenda prepared for the May 19th, 2025 regular school board meeting exactly as said motions are written. By voting affirmatively on this motion, a board member expresses his, her, or their affirmative vote on each of the motions consolidated, hereby subject to any express separations that have been made by any member of the school board.
Second, Maya.
Are there any separations? All right, Board Member Castro?
10.14.
Is that, okay, 10.14?
Yep.
Okay. Board Member Muldrow? Okay. All right. So the main motion is still on the floor. Board Member Megan, your advisory vote.
Aye.
All those in favor, aye. All right. That passes unanimously 6-0. All right, I'm now going to go to 10.7. All right, 10.7. I move that the Board of Education approve an expenditure in the amount of $169,944.48 for the replacement of elementary school math core instructional materials and additional math intervention materials. The total cost is distributed as follows. $149,944.48 using the FY26 curriculum and instruction elementary math line, and $20,000 using the FY26 student services workbooks. I need a second. All right, thank you, Board Member Muldrow. I believe you pulled this one. Okay.
Thank you, Board President Nichols. I'm really excited to see that we're exploring new math materials at the elementary level. We've talked about math at the middle school level a little bit this year and more holistically earlier in the year. I am curious about the materials and what we are hoping will be kind of gained from them, or what we're investing in more specifically. When we've made curriculum investments in the past, particularly when I think about materials investment related to literacy, it's been a far larger investment. And so I'm wondering if this is a specific pilot or something that you all would like to explain to a greater extent.
Absolutely. Good evening again. This is for replacement materials for our current core resource that we have at elementary, which is Bridges. So these are the materials needed in our classrooms to continue with the implementation of our current math resource. Just a reminder to your question, Board Member Muldrow, is this month, I'm trying to remember what month it is, we did talk about math at our instruction work group, and going into the 25-26 school year, we will be engaging in a request for a proposal to look at new materials for K-8 based on some of the recommendations that are coming up from our task force that would be implemented the following year. So we'll be providing the board updates along the way, but this particular consent is just for replacements to continue into next school year.
Can I ask, are we specifically happy with these materials and the outcomes that they've promoted in terms of math throughout the district?
So I think that we are happy with the materials that we have right now. One of the things we indicated at the instruction work group is getting back to using our core resource with fidelity. I think post-COVID, getting back into the priority and the intention around math and math instruction has been something that this year has been a focus for the curriculum and instruction team. And the addition to the intervention, it's a built-in intervention that is provided. And for the moment, yes, the materials are materials that we think are pretty solid, but I do think next year we'll see if there's other materials that might be of more high quality or focus on that student identity piece that we talked about that we may consider for a future purchase.
Thank you so much for answering my questions.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments? All right. Board Member Megan, your advisory vote?
Aye.
All those in favor? Aye. All right, that passes unanimously 6-0. Moving on to 10.12. Okay, I move that the Board of Education contract with Madison College for the Grow Your Own to Associate Degree Program Cohort 2 from fiscal year 2025-26 for $198,500 and fiscal year 2026-27 for $198,500 to be funded through the Department of Engagement, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion budget. I need a second.
Second.
This is 10.12, I believe. Ali, did you pull this one? Okay.
I did. I wanted to celebrate our Grow Your Own program and really talk about what this investment means. And so I was hoping that our administration to the impact of this investment in our Grow Your Own.
Thank you, President Nichols, Board Member Muldrow. Dr. Jen Shepke is going to come down, who is the project manager for both MMSD and UW School of Education.
So the impact of what this means. This is 14 to 18 people traveling as a cohort through all of their classes at Madison College to get their associate degree when they may not have had that opportunity prior. It is giving them money to go to school while they earn their wages in a part-time role and then going to school part-time in ways that many folks are not able to do when they're at that level of education. And then go to UW-Madison to earn their bachelor degree and become a middle school or elementary school teacher. With the people who are in the current cohort, they are, we have 19 in the initial cohort. 90% of those folks are folks of color. Many are first generation college students. And it is going to increase our depth as a district to be able to have teachers who look and have experiences just like our kids.
I just want to say how much I appreciate this work, and I'm sorry that we always talk about it with you really late at night. But
Thank you.
I think that this is a real stepping stone in us diversifying our staff and making sure that our young people can see themselves in the leadership that is their educators. I also, as a person who dropped out of college twice as a single mom, know what it means to be able to work and go to school and balance that within a full-time schedule and be able to support your family while you do it. And so I am tremendously proud to get to support this motion this evening and tremendously grateful for your work, Jen.
Thank you. And it's our staff. They're the ones who are doing the work. I just help guide them along.
Thank you for that, Board Member Muldrow. And Dr. Shepke. Any other questions or comments? All right, Board Member Megan, your advisory vote.
Aye.
All those in favor? Aye. All right, that passes unanimously 6-0. Moving on to 10.14. I move that the Board of Education approve the MOA for July 1, 2025 to June 30th, 2030 for a 5-year renewal of the high-intensity partnership with Children's Wisconsin to provide behavioral health in schools services as set forth in the documents prepared for the May 19th, 2025 regular meeting. In addition, it is recommended that the Board of Education approve an expenditure of $721,875 to be paid to the Children's Wisconsin using funds from student and staff support mental health operating budget for $400,000, Roots and Wings for $164,375, and DPI per pupil mental health funds for $157,500 in order to implement behavioral health in schools in 22 MMSD schools. The initial contract shall run through June 30th, 2026, with an option to renew for 4 additional one-year periods.
Second.
All right, Board Member Castro, I know you wanted this one separated.
I just wanted to take the opportunity to lift this topic up for the profound impact it has on students in our district. There's way too many students who are experiencing or exposed to poverty, incarceration, and violence in our district. And so, and the effect that that can have on the learning and the brain development for our youngest learners. I know this firsthand, so I'm really thankful that our district and with our partners can support these young people through really hard times in learning spaces so that they can feel at home in school and make learning as meaningful as possible.
Yeah, thank you for your comments, Board Member Castro. All right, Board Member Megan, your advisory vote.
Aye.
All right, all those in favor? Aye. All right, that passes 6-0. All right, that gets us through the consent agenda. All right, other reports to the board. First up is the City County Schools Collaborative Committee. As a member of that committee, I can report that we did not meet in May. We did have a meeting with our superintendent, the mayor of the city, and other folks connected to that committee to determine kind of a future state of that committee. And by future state, I mean cadence of meetings, purpose of the committee, and how the committee will function in the future. We will likely hold our next meeting in June, although the two co-chairs of the committee still were gathering some additional information to determine really the purpose of the committee and how to make it more purposeful. So that is the state for that. Next up, Student Senate.
All right, so on March 30th, we had a meeting in which we talked about the election and for presidents and for the next Board of Education representative. Planned 2 voter registration drives, one of which took place at West, and I believe one will take place at East before going into committee time. And then, sorry, I believe these should be April 30th and May 14th. Then at our meeting after that, we had a voter registration drive recap. So at West, we were able to register 20 plus students through the Civic Center CAP, Gown, and Ballot program. And then we went through the Board of Education report, in which we did talk about allocation and surplusing. And then we officially went through our election winners. So our next Board of Education representative will be Claire Lee from Madison West, and the next president of the Student Senate will be Lily Shapiro, also from West, before going into committee time. Our final meeting is going to be May 28th, in which we're doing an end of year celebration. And our new Board of Education representative and president will be leading that meeting. Board members, I would love it, and I'm sure the rest of Student Senate would love it if you were able to drop by and say hi and yeah, congratulate everyone on the work they've done this past year. That's all I have.
Can you repeat the date and the time?
Sorry, yes, it is May 28th, starting at 5:30 p.m. and ending at 7 p.m.
Thank you. All right, next is our Madison School and Community Recreation Advisory Committee. Board Member Mosner Felta.
Thank you. MSCR after school programs are celebrating another successful year of programming with a variety of family nights, culminating performances, and final sporting events across our 33 after school programs. And with MSCR after school ending, that means MSCR on the Move mobile recreation programs are launching their summer season the week of June 16th with 3 free mobile Madison kickoff events at Brittingham, Warner, and Elver Parks. Join us for one of those events or check out MSCR on the Move and other mobile program providers throughout the city. Finally, it is not too late to register for summer programs. Many programs and camps for all ages still have spots for summer 2025. Our advisory council's next meeting is this week, Wednesday. And I think I mentioned to everybody at our last meeting that the MSCR Advisory Committee has welcomed, I think, 9 new members in the last month. So it will be pretty exciting to attend that committee meeting and get that work off the ground.
Very nice. Next up is Policy Committee. I'll have an update.
Yeah, I'll just give a quick update. We have a special policy committee meeting as a board on May 22nd, which we will review some of the policies for second reads as it relates to the ways of working for board members, job descriptions and such. And then also have conversation around TEP, and then our promotion. And I believe also we may have one other that we are just waiting for. So we have a pretty big slate on Thursday.
Thank you for that.
And it's virtual.
Oh, okay. Nice to know. All right. The next committee is the Board Governance Committee, which technically has not been meeting, although we will be bringing updates to the board retreat around a variety of options that we may want to explore around board governance, and that board retreat is on Friday, May 23rd. All right, for other business, next we have the Badger Rock Charter Contract. I move that the Board of Education approve the charter contract renewal for Badger Rock Middle School as set forth in the documents from the May 19th, 2025 regular meeting for a term of 5 years beginning July 1st, 2025 through June 30th, 2030. The contract will be edited and formatted, but no substantive changes will be made before it is signed.
Second.
All right, thank you. Questions or comments on this motion? Board Member Muldrow.
I just want to thank Badger Rock for all the information they provided to each of us board members throughout the process of renewing their charter. I think that there's a lot to be gained from our instrumentalities, and I greatly appreciate their contribution to our district. I'm looking forward to voting in favor of the extension of their contract.
Thank you, Board Member Muldrow. Seeing no other questions, I do have a question that I would love to get some follow-up on. And this came up through the renewal vote on the actual charter. And this is specific to the recruitment and enrollment strategy, which was a big part of our conversation. And we knew that it would come forward through the contract. So right now, if I'm reading this correctly, this I think would be directed to somebody in the administration. Number 9, item 9 in the contract says that the Badger Rock Middle School is a multi-age middle school with the capacity to currently serve up to 100 students in grades 6, 7, and 8. The school will strive to maintain a minimum and maximum student enrollment of 95 and 100 respectively. And the council will implement a robust recruiting plan for incoming 6th graders and available 7th and 8th grade seats. So I think my question for someone in the administration is, as you all were negotiating with Badger Rock around their minimum and maximum enrollment, did you all reconcile the actual physical capacity of the building? Because I feel like that was one of the things that came up repeatedly from Badger Rock when the enrollment had been at a higher number, that there was limitations in the physical space. And shall I assume that they have agreed to this enrollment number because it's in the contract?
So I will be happy, Board President Nichols, to answer that question. You may recall that the administration had suggested 125 students as our original number to continue to grow students at Badger Rock based on what Badger Rock has mentioned, that they often have a wait list. We have had a really great collaboration with the principal and the council of Badger Rock to get to this place of 100. And I'll explain why. The physical capacity of the building does allow for more than 100 students. However, Badger Rock's instructional design and their model that is really what the charter is kind of rooted in is around multi-age and project-based learning. And based on their model, the discussion and decision was to have us move to 100 students as their growth. They're at 92 students this year. And the thought of maybe having a larger sixth grade class next year as the place to grow some of the students to meet the 100 capacity. In addition to the instructional design, their class size in terms of dividing everything by 3, when you think of sixth grade, seventh grade, eighth grade, they try to keep it as balanced as possible. And so that was the other reason. So the short answer is yes, we came to this consensus and this collaboration together with our team and Badger Rock and feel comfortable with this number of trying to grow to 100 based on where they are and really rooted in their instructional design around project-based learning and multi-age. Does that answer your question?
Yes, that's very helpful. Thank you very much. Are there any other questions or comments on this contract? All right, seeing none. Board Member Megan, your advisory.
Aye.
All right, all those in favor? Aye. All right, that passes unanimously, 6-0. We have no other old or new business for this meeting, and so I'll a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Maya.
All right, all those ready to adjourn? Aye. And Board Member Megan, yes, your advisory vote? Yes, okay, thank you. Meeting is adjourned.